Hey everyone, it's Gary Height from Perkins Valley High School, and this area here is part of the reading space in my classroom, and I teach a gifted and honors ninth and 10th grade English here. And I want to talk a little bit about what I've been doing the past week or so since we started school on August 28th. And so one of the things I wanted to do differently this year is sort of follow in the footsteps of our new superintendent who kicked off the start of the school year by saying that we are going to start doing school different. And she even created a hashtag PVSD, do school different, and talked about some of the things that people are doing and how we can go about even doing that in our own classes. I've been doing school different for a really long time. But I've never really taken it outside the walls of my classroom. So this is an attempt for me to try and to get there. So one of the things that I know about doing things differently is that if you don't set the culture for how things are going to be done differently and sort of like a foundation for accepting all different kinds of things, you're never going to do anything different. So last week we did a lot of improv activities. I have some videos of students doing that, and I'll post those to my YouTube channel as well. But we also started taking a look at some critiques of education. I used 4 different articles, and the first article is one that came across my Twitter feed. It was from Medium, and a young girl who is a rising 10th grader, so she's in 10th grade now. She wrote it back in June, I think. Her name's Isabella Briere, I think, and she wrote an article, blog post really, called Why School Sucks. Hint, it's not because it's boring. And so I had a group of students in each of my 5 classes read that article, and they had to pull out what they felt were the most important points from that article. I had another group read an article by a former student of mine. She's now a freshman, and she wrote an article called Unhealthy Productivity Tips for Losing Your Curiosity. And it was all about how, looking back on her high school experience, she realized there were so many things that the system did or that she just allowed the system to do to her that really robbed her of the passion that she once had for learning. I also gave another group a Harvard Business Review article called Bad Habits That You Learned in School. And finally, a final group got an article from the Atlantic Monthly called Why Grades Aren't Paramount to Achievement. So I had 4 different groups in all 5 classes read these articles. And then today, what they did is each group took a look at all 5 classes' Postit Notes, and what they did is they went through and they did some affinity mapping. So they took and they organized the Postit Notes according to what they felt were the most important groupings, and then from those most important groupings, they ranked the top 3. And then if you're going to reimagine education, which is really what we're trying to do here in my district, then I felt that what we had to do was sort of think in what-if terms. So I asked them to take the top 3 affinity groupings from each article and turn them into what-if statements. So for example, the orange ones here on this poster are things like from Why School Sucks. What if school didn't pressure students? What if there were less requirements and more options? What if learning was more important than memorization? So these are great statements because they give us a vision of where we might be able to go with rethinking and reimagining education. From my own students' article, Unhealthy Productivity Tips, what if school encouraged health by starting classes later? What if you had more freedom in class selection? And what if school took the amount of sleep teens get into making schedules? From Bad Habits You Learn in School, what if we all were leaders? What if leadership skills were taught in school? What if we didn't fear failure? What if there were no teachers? And finally, from Grades, the article on grading, what if students weren't afraid to have opinions and different answers? What if we saw that grades diminished students' interest and quality of thinking? What if parents were more focused on students' learning than their grades? It's just a lot of things coming out of those articles that really are inimical to the way that we do and have been doing school. I don't know that there's systemic changes that need to happen, but it seems to me that if there are any small things that we can start in this classroom, we're going to start them. And I'll keep you up to date on that. But one of the other things I did today, and sort of just to wrap up this past week, is I had the students do some free writing. And I asked them to think about how do the words student and learner, how do they see those things separately in terms of the system of school? So I sort of rephrased it like, when school calls me a student, I feel or it means, and then when school calls me a learner, I feel or it means. And I was just blown away by some of these reactions, especially from the ninth graders, because this is just their first week in high school. And here's what I got from some of the ninth graders. When school calls me a student, I feel like I am being taught. I'm part of an army. I'm less than someone else in the classroom. I feel simplistic. It's a narrow focus. I just have to conform. I'm just showing up. I'm just a number. But when they talked about learner, things shifted. I feel creative. I feel more like myself. Students are all the same. Learners are all different. I feel like I can be more curious. I'm a question asker. So it's just one class. I mean, I've got a ton from other classes. As a student, I feel that my hair is pulled back and my pencil is sharpened. As a learner, I'm valuable and worthwhile. So, one of the things that we talk about in my class, which is an English class, is just how important words are. I mean, Ludwig Wittgenstein, a great philosopher and linguist, talked about how the limits of his language represent the limits of his world. And when we don't have words for things, those things don't exist, right? Language is transactional. And if we can't transact because the word at the conceptual level just doesn't exist for us, then we can't transfer that concept or transact that concept to other people. So words mean things, and in an English classroom, it's really important to lay that down for students. And it was a great lesson. I think they pulled out a lot of really interesting data, qualitative data from that. So that's the week in wrap-up. I'll try and keep these shorter next time, and let you know how things are going with doing school different. Next week, we are going to be starting with portfolios using Seesaw as a digital portfolio. They're going to be creating their blogs, and we're going to be diving into some of our first readings and first writing activities. So, from Gifted Honors English and Honors English at Perkiomen Valley High School here in Pennsylvania.